There we go. Okay.
Shut up.
Of course, I have an itchy nose now. Yeah. All right. So I'll say welcome, everybody. So this is our February live Zoom for ePaint Live. And I want to say thank you all for coming and letting me record, which is great because then you can watch it again and again, or you can go back and watch the parts that were difficult. You know, you can skip through on YouTube, and then anyone who can make it gets a chance to see it. And I have people all over the world who actually watch these, which is really fun for me when I see that. I can see that some of those stats, and people send me little Instagram thank yous. So thanks for making it happen and being here live. What I want to say is the purpose of doing these in a plein air group, right? ePaint Live is my plein air group. But the point of doing these live Zooms beforehand is to give us the ability to discuss fundamentals of drawing and painting in the studio or here at home. And that way we're covering kind of the building blocks. There's really like 7 basic fundamental building blocks for drawing. So if you think about them, it's composition, perspective, line, value, et cetera, et cetera. And if we were out in this beautiful setting, we really don't want that to be our classroom. We just want to get at it, you know? So when we do talk about these things and get a chance to have some understanding of them and, you know, maybe even practice them a little in these live Zooms, then when we do go out to paint, then they're sort of second nature. They're already at least in the back of our mind, even if we haven't necessarily incorporated them yet into our plein air practice. We've already learned kind of a little bit about them and how they might apply. And then we don't have to really think about it as much. Eventually it becomes like muscle memory. And even for those of us who do plein air painting on a regular basis, there's so many different elements, you know, that go into it, that it's nice to have refreshers every once in a while, you know, because you might forget, oh, negative painting, that's something I haven't really thought about or utilized a lot in my practice lately. So that's why we do these, and I hope that you guys get something out of them. And then, you know, for those of you guys who aren't plein air painters, this just applies to your regular studio work, right? Any two-dimensional practice. So it could be drawing, painting, collage, really anything. And I think this one, value, especially relates to that. So what we're going to do today is I want to talk about the value in art, the importance of understanding and being able to properly interpret and apply value in art. And when I say value, I don't mean how much you're getting paid to paint, or how much is that painting that you have that you got at a flea market, how much is that worth? It's not what I'm talking about. Value is just simply the concept of the lights and the darks in your artwork. And I'll say painting, but again, it could apply to drawing and charcoal and pastel and so many other things. And we'll talk mainly about representational art. We won't talk about abstract in terms of non-representational abstract, but I did show some examples of representational abstraction so that you can see that value is also important in that work as well. Okay. Also, we're not talking purely about line drawings. Line drawings often don't have any value associated with them. So might be the white of the paper and then the color of the line. We're talking about anything that is shaded in any sense. Okay. So, so what I'll do is I'll explain what is value, and then how do you sort of see it? Why is it important in painting, and how do you see it? And then we'll do some little value studies. So we'll interpret value here, right? So who here has some experience with value, understanding value and using it in your artwork? Raise your hand. A little bit, okay.
You bring it up all the time, and I try, but this will be a good class for me.
Okay, yeah, good. Good for all of us, because it's always there and it's not always easy. So that's great. Does anyone have any questions about what we're going to do before I get started? Okay, we're a small group, which is great. So we'll go ahead and we'll just get started. And I have a PowerPoint because we're all very visual people. So rather than just, hold things up to the screen, I'm going to start by showing you my PowerPoint, but please just shout. We are a small group. Just shout out your questions or comments, or if something isn't visible on the screen, definitely shout that out. Okay, so first thing I want to do is just go to my PowerPoint. By the way, you guys are all asking me all the time, you're so nice about tipping me. I put links for tips. If you enjoy this, you're welcome to tip me, but this is pay as you wish. It's free, so you don't have to tip me. But I put some links in the email. Okay, so here we go. All right, so can everyone see my screen now where it says the importance of value in art? Great.
Yes.
Yes.
So there's a way to get this to go full screen, so let's try that. There we go. How's that? Does everybody see that fine?
Yes.
All right. Excellent. So, or not. Now it doesn't want to do it. Okay, we're going to show it small. Okay. So value in art refers to how light or dark your painting is, or how light or dark a color is. And it's measured on a scale, and it's always relative. So there is no like hard and fast. The colors are always, the values of those colors or of the black and whites are always relative to each other when value is spoken about in art. And with the scale, white is the highest value. So sometimes you'll see where people put a 1 on the white. That's wrong, okay? It's very easy to think about, especially with watercolor, because white is the white of the paper. But white is the highest value. So when people talk about high key value paintings, they have a lot of white in them and not as much dark. Okay, the black would be the lowest value. So on a scale here of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values, the white would be a 5, the black would be the 1. And then you've got 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So black is the lowest value. There isn't a scale of 5. The variations are infinite, but by sort of narrowing them down, it makes it easier to grasp. I'll show you some other examples in a little bit, okay? So all value is talking about is light and dark, regardless of color. Okay, this is a picture of my Uncle Bill catching a big tuna somewhere. I have no idea where. Nobody knows. I just like this photo. So value is considered by many artists and critics to be one of the most important, and maybe the most important variable to the success of a painting or a drawing, and even more so than your selection of the color. And when we say color, color can mean a lot of things. So we're talking about the intrinsic color, the hue, red, yellow, blue, green, pink, purple, whatever you choose, right? So here, when you take the color out of the equation, as in the sepia photograph, you can see that the lights and the darks are very important on their own, right? And there are some good things about the values in this photo and some things that are maybe not so good. They're all real values because this is an unmanipulated photo, but where the placement of the lights and darks are in some cases are very clear cut and interesting. For example, right here, where you can see this high contrast and you get this design back here, and also the white of the shirt sort of draws you in. But down here, which I would have really liked more value contrast here, where you really saw the face of the fish. See, I'm an artist, so I'm already critiquing this photo, right? But it would be nice if the fish's face sort of was lighter in value or more of a contrast to the background, because then you'd have like the human face and the fish face, and I think it would be more compelling. But it is very interesting in a lot of places you get all this little detail, right? And also here, if this is a fishing rod, it would be nice if that were brighter, because then that would tell the story more. Like, did he catch this fish or is he just looking at it? Right? Okay. So let's get rid of that annotation. Okay. Or let's get rid of that. Let's see. Okay. So in terms of color, color actually has, we all love color, right? So I just want to tell you guys, I'm not beating on color. Color is really important for a lot of things. It's extremely powerful. It helps us create a likeness in our painting. It helps convey emotion, very more than anything else, mood and other things. Color is important, but in terms of the structure, having a structure to your painting, hues, colors are of little to no importance. It's the value that creates the structure, and I'll explain that in a little bit. But I think, you know, by looking at a monochromatic sketch and by looking at, let me get rid of this annotate, and by looking at black and white photos or black and white paintings, I think we all know that they can stand alone without color. Did you guys know that color was not as important as value? Does anyone know that? Or does anyone feel differently maybe?
I never thought of it that way. This is Kara.
Ah, okay. Color
So
is
thank you.
Color is fun for most of us. Value is hard and maybe not as much fun. Although, you know, Ansel Adams and other people who work in black and white would probably disagree about that. But color can be exciting and fun, and we can often kind of skip directly to that and forget about value. But why do we need value? Why is value so important? So first of all, and I'm going to show you pictures that have no value in them, and then I'll show you pictures in color as well. First of all, value is a powerful tool in structuring your painting and telling people where to look. So the viewer's eye, our eyes are naturally drawn to areas that have high contrast in them. And that doesn't necessarily mean just black and white areas, right? But if you look at this picture, where are your eyes drawn? Anyone wanna?
Bottom right.
The bottom right here?
Yeah. Well, but also that's first, and then I look upward on the left.
Here. Right. Yeah. What about up here?
Mm-hmm.
Not as much, right? Yeah. I think you're right. So here you have some areas of high contrast. You've got the highest value, the white, right here next to a fairly low value. I would say this painting has 5 values in it, maybe 6. But you've got the white of the paper, then you have this here. I would put this as the next highest value, and there's some of it in here. Then you've got sort of this range here, right? You have another slightly dark here, and then right here, these marks being the lowest value. So it's the areas of the high contrast that our eyes are drawn to, right? Dark next to light, rather than values that are quite close to each other on the scale. So this, if you guys know my painting, this painting of mine, it's not a black and white painting. It actually is a colored painting. So you'll see it in just a little bit. But we can use value to create contrast that draw the viewer's eye in. Value is also, I think, even more importantly, it's the tool that we use as artists to depict light and shadow in a 2-dimensional piece of art. So in a sculpture, it is naturally, sculptures are mostly 3-dimensional, right? So you can create the form using 3 dimensions. And then even more than that, you can light it in such a way that the light and the form is enhanced, the light and the shadows on the will bounce off the form. In a 2-dimensional painting, we're trying to most often recreate a 3-dimensional scene into 2 dimensions. There's no actual light source and there's no actual form. Everything is flattened out, correct? So we have to create that illusion of light by using lights and darks and then tones in between, because there's no actual light source. So the whole point of using value is to create the illusion that there's light in your painting and also that there's form to your painting. So I think thinking about the fact that there's light in your painting is very useful when you're thinking about, say, a landscape or something like that. And when you're thinking more about an object, it might be easier to consider that you're trying to create the shape of a form using lights and shadows. Okay, so here's an object, right? When you use highlights and shadows in a form, you give that form the illusion of light bouncing off of it. Light gives form to objects. So you have both core shadows and highlights, and then all those middle tones as well. And then you also have the cast shadows. And those cast shadows also are important because they ground the different elements in the painting, right? Is it floating or is it sitting on a surface? And then in addition to that grounding, where is the light coming from? Well, we know where light is coming from often in paintings because we can tell where the placement of the shadow is. We also know how strong or how weak the light source is quite often by the length or shortness of the shadow. And we also can tell quite often how opaque the object is by how opaque or transparent the shadow is, how light or dark the shadow is. Because when an object is transparent, the shadow is lighter in color because it's going through something. When it's opaque, it's just casting a very dark shadow. So that's what value does for objects. And when you look at, I just use the same painting, you can see that the highlights would be the area, and this is simplified, but the highlights are the areas where you have light hitting. So on the left, you've got the light, here's the window. So here's the main light source, and it's bouncing off all of these areas: top of the head, shoulder, hand, right side of the globe, the book. And the shadow is the area where the light can't reach or the light isn't hitting. So again, with the light source coming from the window, the areas that would be in shadow are going to be lower down on the ground. So these folds in the tablecloth for the most part, the back of the head, the back of the jacket, the, you know, etc. The backside of the globe even to a degree. Does that make sense to everybody? So without value, you can't depict a light source like that. I mean, you could try to do it in color, but if all those colors have the same intrinsic value, you're going to have trouble with that. And I'll show you that in just a bit. Okay. The last thing is that value, the last way we use value and why it's really important in paintings is that value can help create the illusion of depth. We already talked about volume or mass, you know, by creating these core shadows, but also the illusion of depth and then light itself. And it can also help you create that mood and that atmosphere. Paintings that don't have clear value definition can be confusing or even misleading. So confusing at best or less powerful, and then confusing and misleading. So for example, in this picture, does this confuse anyone at all? What you're looking at here. No. It's not terrible, by the way, and I'm not beating on this artist. This wasn't mine, but tell me what you see here. And you can tell me the good things too. Can you guys see where this cow starts and ends very easily?
No, no. The lightest value is not, it's supposed to be defining the outline of the butt and the head, but it blends into the background.
Correct.
Because the background is so light.
Yeah, the background, this is supposed to be a backlit animal. And the rendering of the animal is lovely. It looks like a real cow. It's very sensitive, right? But things get lost in translation because the background is almost the same value as the cow itself. And like Chris said, there should be more of a halo effect around this animal. Plus here in the hindquarters, this should be darker in value, not this, right? And then what's happening down here, I don't know, but that's where my eye is going because that's one of the greatest value contrasts. And I don't understand why that's important. This face is done well though. I would do maybe a little more light.
And I was thinking the sun was behind
Yes.
to the right, and that's why they did that lighter, but I didn't
Yeah.
understand that dark part in the bottom.
Yeah, this is where the sun is supposed to be coming from. You're correct. It's supposed to be coming from here. So it's backlit. Let me see if I have a backlit. I know I put a backlit in here. I just don't remember where I put it.
That bottom dark spot doesn't make sense to
Makes
me.
no sense. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with you. But I think we'll analyze this a little bit more in just a bit. So hold those thoughts. But yeah, it can be confusing or misleading, or just purely not really telling the strongest story that you want to tell. Like I'm always saying in class, right? Is that telling the story? For those of you guys who did the Friday happy hour with me and we did the penguins, I struggled with my background because a penguin is black and white, and that background should have been a very clear mid-tone. And I struggled with that because I didn't do a value study. Yeah, thanks, Shelley. I didn't do a
I'm like
value
mine.
study.
That's exactly what's wrong with mine. I'm like,
Yeah, so quite often when there's something wrong with my picture, my own paintings, it has to do with value or temperature, color harmony, and specifically temperature. It's for me, it's not usually perspective or anything like that. Value is elusive. So that's why this class, I think, is really timely. You know, especially when, like, for example, if you're going out to Catalina with me, and a bunch of you guys are, it's going to be, you know, maybe it'll be a bright morning or a bright midday when we're painting, and everything can look the same. You know, even on a foggy morning, everything can look the same in terms of value. How do you then, you know, sort of translate that into a compelling painting? It can be difficult. So you have to first be able to know it's important, second, to see it, and third, be able to translate it in a way that will help your painting. So if you don't have, values are often called true, that's the artistic term. If you don't have true, or what I would call proper value definition, an artist will try to make up for these things using line or color or even technique. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. Here in this sepia tone picture, so it's not black and white, but it's still one color. What do you guys see here that you think either works or doesn't work? This is mine, so I don't mind if you critique the heck out of it and say things don't work. It's okay with me.
This is Heidi.
Hi.
I'm not sure if I'm looking at something that's cratered
Mm-hmm.
and scooped out. I think that's what, or if it's supposed to be one round thing.
It's supposed to be a
Yeah.
lemon, right? So you're not sure if it's looking like there's a core shadow in it or if there's like actual holes in it.
It almost looks
Yeah.
like it almost looks like I'm looking at a scooped out. I mean, it looks like it's in the shape of a lemon, but it looks like
Yeah.
it's scooped out gourd or something, you know.
Yeah, that's a good critique. And that's because what you've got is you've got here, you have values like a lighter value on top of a lighter value, and then you have a darker value here. So it looks like it's going down into a hole. So that's a great critique. Yeah. Anything well done here, or?
I like the shadow.
Yeah, I think the shadow works. The shadow is, the shadow and the highlight, I think both work. So this highlight here is bouncing light in the correct direction. Light's coming from here. And then the shadow is being thrown out in the right direction. And I think they're both correct in terms of value. Yeah. Good points.
This is Chris. So I like the shadow, the cast shadow also, but and I like the way there's a darker one and then a lighter shadow
Mhm.
around it, but I'm not understanding, is it an artistic choice or are there two different values of shadow?
Yeah,
cast.
yeah. So a lot of the time, it depends on the diffusion of the light. So if you throw a very strong light source, and often, especially if it's close to the object, you'll only have the darker shadow. Whereas if you have more than one light source, or if you have it from further away, the shadow will diffuse out. So in this case, there were two light sources.
I get it.
Yeah, that's really good point. Great. So here's the cow picture in color.
Mm.
Now, do you think that the color has helped resolve those challenges? And if so, to what degree? Or maybe you think it hasn't.
This
When
is
I
Kath.
first-
I think it's a lot clearer to me looking at it with this color. It doesn't seem confusing. To me, I like the color choice too. I like it.
It's helped. Yeah, I know. I like this picture too. I really like it. I think that this artist would consider themselves a tonalist. Tonalists sit in the middle. So when you are looking at that value scale again, let me just stop this for a second. When you're looking at that value scale, and I'll show you here, you have, when you add white to any color, you get what's called a tint of that color. When you add black, you get what's called shade. And when you add gray, you get a tone. So artists who like to sort of paint here in the soft middle, I would call it, not the black and not the white, they like to kind of use these values that are closer to each other. That is, there's not as much contrast. They call themselves tonalists. And tonalism can be really beautiful because what you get with tonalism, and I'll show you again, we'll go back to this, is you get, especially for pastorals, you get a very calm, relaxing mood to the painting, regardless of the color. I mean, even if you go back and look at this, it's not jarring, it's not very active, like there's not a lot of energy in this. Adding in the colors, they're also soft colors and they're really harmonious colors. You know, you have an earth tone and then you have blues and greens. You get this tonalist effect, which is again why I think that color can help, but this painting could have been much improved with just a couple of tweaks, right? So it works in some ways, it's pleasing in some ways, not in others, which is quite often, you know, what happens with our own paintings. You know, they're not all so strict, you know, scores or fails, right? Successes or failures. Sometimes there's something about it we're not quite sure, or it didn't come out the way we wanted it to in our head. It didn't quite work and we're not sure why. So it's not always that straightforward. It's good to analyze it and think, okay, yeah, I do think the color helped in this case because the background here is very different from the foreground, right? There isn't a lot of blue and green in that background either. So that helps a lot. But there's also things that didn't quite work. Like it's so busy in the background that you almost lose the interest of the texture in the fur. So I'll show you in one as we go on, or I can probably just skip there right now and show you. Yeah, here you go. So here are these two next to each other, right? So again, the calf will come forward more if you had more highlight around it. Look at these backlit pictures. Do you see how much light there is? Making it glow. So this could have really glowed. Here, these horses are a whole different way of doing backlit, but the value differentiation between the horse, which is totally almost in silhouette, and then the brightness of that background, very interesting and more powerful. So definitely not tonalist, but if you look at the two dogs, what you do see is that there's more differentiation between the background and the animal who's the subject. You also have, like in the one on the left, it's a lot more extremely blurred in the background. And that blurring of the background really like helps. It's not competing with the fur in the foreground. Same up here, right? At least the upper portion is blurred out. So do you see how those little tweaks could have improved this little guy over here. Either even a lighter background or a darker background. And then more of a halo effect around him. And then just resolve some of this darkness that's here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So again, not always completely straightforward, but we might have even jumped ahead of ourselves a little bit, but I think that's a good one to analyze. Okay. So I just want to reiterate, I'm not against color. I love color, but color and value are related. So if you're just trying to use color to make a strong painting, it won't serve you because you can't get away from the fact that color and value are related, and it's going to show up whether you realize it or not. So what is the relationship between color and value? So every color on the color wheel has an underlying value that's somewhere in between white and black, which are considered non-colors, or a lack of color and then all the colors. So let's look at the standard color wheel. So we're all fairly familiar with this color wheel, right? You can even use, I have a manual color wheel here. Okay, I have two of them. So on the color wheel, do we see a lot of value here? Do you think? Can you see it? Takes training, so if you can't see it, that's okay. Let's look at it now with no actual color in it. So this is just manipulated to turn it into a sepia tone. I could have just as easily done black and white. I did brown and white. But if you take a look at the color wheel with the color taken out of it and everything being put on a brown scale, what you'll see is that there are colors that are different from each other. For example, this cool yellow is very different from the cool red, slightly different from a warm yellow or an orange, for example. There's some variation in the value here, but there's also a lot of colors, almost the whole bottom of the wheel, that have the same value to them. Can you guys see that? Okay.
Yes.
So it's important to notice, like, not all colors are equal in terms of light or dark. And we're just talking about, we're talking about pure hues when we look at the color wheel, right? Red, orange, yellow. They're not tinted out with white. They're not shaded in with black, and they don't have any gray mixed into them. They are pure hues, straight out of the tube, if you want to think about it that way. Okay. Now, for every single pure hue on the color wheel, you can have an individual value scale where you tint it all the way up to white and then shade it all the way down to black. In watercolor, it's somewhat easier to do because you don't have to even add white, you just add more water. And with the dark color, like an ultramarine blue or an indigo, it already has black in it, right? So you don't even have to add black. But you guys have probably seen a lot of color scales where value scales with color where a lot of artists like to practice this. And what they will do is they will add white, add gray, and add black. And that's what this side of the color wheel does for you. This side of the color wheel is tint, tone, and shade of every color. Now they're only giving you 3. They're not going all the way to black, nor are they going all the way to white. But this color wheel is a good starting off point for seeing value in individual colors. But it's also, this is really made to help you mix things. So if you were trying to mix this color, you might not realize you have to add black to yellow to get to this color, right? You might understand how to pastel a color out with white or water in our case, but some of these colors, it's weirder and it seems more odd. So you might be trying to put green in there to get this color. You don't have to. So that's what this color wheel is really for. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, let's go back to that. So making these value scales are a very good exercise. in helping to understand how for every hue, you can have different values. You can have a whole sliding scale of value. But if you go back to the color wheel, you can see that when you put these similar colors next to each other, they have very little value contrast. And so your eye might, and your viewer's eye might have difficulty identifying which color has more importance in your painting, right? So if you're just thinking about color and putting colors that you like next to each other, or trying to replicate the color that you see in a photo or something like that without altering them, then it can be less powerful or even confusing. That's why value is a more powerful structural element than a hue that you use. And it also, and I'll go down here again, it also is why a lot of the time, even when you have very bright and colorful paintings, they work. Or even I said I was going to talk a little bit about abstraction. So this is a pretty abstracted picture. This could be many things, right? It's not a literal picture. I know what it is because I painted it. But even though there are a lot of bright colors, you might think, oh, well, that was successful because the colors are so beautiful and so harmonious. And color harmony is important. But if you just look at it on this side, on the grayscale side, again, you can see it works because the colors have very different values. I didn't manipulate this other than turn it to black and white. So I didn't play with the contrast or anything like that. This is true in black and white and gray. And the reason why it works isn't just because it's got pretty colors, it's because the value contrasts are helpful in both grounding the painting and in leading the eye around the painting. And that's because this yellow has for example, this yellow has a much lower value than this right here next to it. And again, all these blues have enough value differentiation in them that the darkest ones, which is where I wanted everyone to look, pop out. And then purely the juxtaposition of dark and light here, that works as well because the colors I chose have different values. Okay. So when you see a work of abstracted art, and a lot of non-artists will say, oh my God, that's like a child could do that, like anyone could do that. Why would you call that art? It can be very deceptive, right? So the abstract artists have the fundamentals there, and you might not everybody might realize it, but they're there. Otherwise it wouldn't be compelling.
Hey, Anne.
Yeah.
This is Kathy.
Hey,
Can you go right back to the picture you were just on with the two each other? This one, or okay. So when I'm thinking about what you say about value, I wish I could point. The yellow spike things in the middle here in the color.
I'll make you a co-host and then you can point.
Okay.
You can use your annotation and you can use that little
Do what?
function. So you have a little annotation.
I do.
Yes. I'm trying to remember where it is on yours. Hold on one sec. It's on. I'm always on my own. Trying to remember where it is. Anybody remember where it is? Sorry, when I'm not the host, I can do it really well. I'm sorry. Tell me where to do it.
Okay.
I'll do it.
If you put it in share screen again, we might be able to see it better.
Okay. We're shared.
Okay. Well, okay, so I'm looking at the picture on the left, the one with the different colors.
Okay.
And more to the left of center, the yellow that's used there.
This
You know,
one.
this, yes, no, down. Yes, that's it. Okay, when I look at that, and then I look to your other one, the black and white one, the same area. I see the one to the left as having more value. And I'm wondering if I'm using the right word because it seems a deeper color than the representative shape on the right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like it seems more saturated, so it should have slightly more value.
Yeah, is that correct?
Maybe a little bit. It might be a little bit correct. So again, we're relying on an app. I didn't use like a grayscale finder to match it, but it's only as good as the computer app that's doing it. So it may be a little bit off.
It,
Yeah.
it just seems to me that
Yeah.
shapes on the left to the right seem to match the shapes on the right in the right picture. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah, so anyway,
Yeah.
that's just my,
Yeah, I think it,
That's-
I mean, again, it's only as good as the application that's being used. So
Mhm.
when this computer app that I used, like I said, I didn't fiddle with any of the contrast or anything, but it's only as good as like the computer software that is recognizing those values. So your eye is probably a little more sensitive, so you're probably right, but it's not that far off. Not that far off. Yeah. I know what you're
Thanks.
saying now. Yeah, the other way, obviously we're a little ahead of ourselves, but another way to check it is by, you can use a grayscale value finder and you try to match it. So if you're holding it up against it, you can see is this one seems to be like a value number 7. And then if I look at the other value, it's a value 9. Are they that far apart in the color version? Maybe not. It might have made those yellows a little bit lighter in this application. Yeah, it's a good point. Oh, annotate is under view options. Okay, I don't know who said that. Thank you for saying that. I just can't see it because I have too many things open. That was Heidi. Thank you, Heidi. Okay. So you go under the pull down up on top, view options. Thank you. Okay. So yeah, sometimes you have, you know, one app is a little bit better than the other. I think I used this on the laptop is where I changed this to grayscale. I think the one on the iPhone is actually a little bit more accurate, a little more finesse. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say too is it's pretty clear in this picture where the light source is coming from. And I think that that helps ground things as well. Okay, so let's go back up here. Let's talk about value scales since I mentioned it before. So obviously there's more than just white, black, and gray. There's a lot of grays in between. When you think about value, there's infinite number of values between white and black. Our artists use a lot of different scales. You can simplify or be as complicated as you're comfortable with. I think it's important. I think it's helpful to start with either 3 or 5. 3 values is often not enough for beginning artists. So 5 is good because with 5, you have an odd number and you can find that middle value. And then you can work out towards what would be your darkest and what would be your lightest. And you still have 2 more options or 3 midtones in between. So all the colors in your painting can be at some point placed on this value scale, even if you have to simplify them. Okay. There's a lot of different tools you can use. So you can use, like I use this grayscale finder here, has even instructions on how to use it, which is really helpful. A lot of it doesn't have to do with watercolor. They like to add white to everything. You know, that's not something we do in watercolor. We add water to everything. You don't even have to buy a grayscale finder. You can print one out. And some artists print them out and then they punch a hole in the middle, because then they can just lay it right over the picture. So for example, this looks like a bird, and this artist has printed out a black and white version of the photograph that they want to draw. And then they are laying their grayscale right over it to find what is their midtone, it looks like, or one of their midtones. Another way to do it is, if you don't like the idea of punching a hole in the middle, you can sort of crop your value scale right up to the edge, so there's no white. And that way, when you lay it, you have like this whole edge right here, which will be right next to the color you're trying to find. Does that make sense? So more like this, how there's no border on it. You could lay it right up to your picture. I have one here, but it's not grayscale, but you can lay it right up to there and try to match it. So there's no white border getting, or black line getting in your way. Again, you can just Google one and print it out. Does anyone have these?
Yes.
Cool.
No.
Oh, well, they're so helpful when you're planning a painting. So let's go back that. Okay. So if you want to understand value better and you want to create more compelling pictures, it's important to think about color as coming after value. So take color out of the equation and don't think about it until your values are set. Okay. So the easiest way to do that is to use value studies. You can use tools to manipulate values. You can do it on your computer and your phone, like I've kind of just showed you, and I'll show you how to do it. Another way to do it is just paint in one hue. Just pick one color and just do your value study using consistencies. So in this one, you can see those trees in the background. They're done using tea. We've got milk, and we've got honey here in some of the darker areas. We also have some in between. So when I use 5, I use tea, coffee, milk, cream, honey, 5 different consistencies. A lot of you guys are familiar with me using these, right? You can also just draw. You can draw in charcoal. You can draw in graphite. So more practice sketching, whether you're sketching in one color in watercolor, or you're sketching in magic marker, charcoal, graphite, whatever it is. That's the best way to start thinking more closely about value. And I do a lot of sketching without actual shading and values. It's just I don't show you guys a lot of that, but I do quite a bit of it. That's little Shelby. Okay, there's also apps you can use. So the original value study is called Notan. Notan it's just the Japanese word, and it means light dark harmony. And all it is the simplification of a subject from its original colors down to just 2 basic values, black and white. And when you're using white paper, it becomes very easy. You're just simplifying those shapes and making sure that you know where you want the viewer to look, and also if the shapes create a compelling composition. So if you look at the right, that's a Monet. It's a Cliff to Oval sunset. You've got the keyhole in the cliff, which obviously is the most important element of the painting. That's where Monet wanted that eye to look. But then if you look at the rest of it, you've got the ripples on the water, and there's no gray in here. It's literally just white and black. Does it work on its own? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Then on the left, you've got Whistler's mother. And this is literally just take out her head and you've got that black shape of the body and the black curtain, and then the background, the baseboard. And again, that's a compelling composition in and of itself without even the portrait being there. So there's apps that you can buy. They're called the Notenizer. And Notenizer is one of them. Notenizer will just turn any photo into a black and white version, taking out all of the midtones and just making everything either one extreme or the other. So it doesn't eliminate the elements, right? Like this whole cliff isn't one value, but it's eliminating the in-betweeners and it's forcing it all into either dark or light. Dark is dark, light is light. Okay. A lot of people like to add the third value, black, white, one gray. That's a three-tone, you can call it a 3-value noten. You can just call it a 3-value study. Once you have more than 3 values, it's not a noten anymore. But by simplifying the scene to 2 basic values, light and dark, and maybe you want to add a gray, you're eliminating the distractions of color, of pattern, of a lot of detail, and you're just creating a balance of compelling values. So you are paying attention to value, and it also forces you to pay attention to composition. I don't use the Notenizer, even though I have used it. I use my own iPhone. Your photo editing functions can create value studies for you. Okay, so if everybody can take their phone, does everyone know how to do this? I should ask, yeah? Is there anyone who doesn't know how to do this? Don't be embarrassed if you've never done this.
I've never done it.
Okay, let me show you guys how you would do this. So grab your, we'll do it with the doggy. Here. Let me see if I can get it more easily here. Did we? Oh, it helps when I put that there. Okay, so here's, I'm in my, now this is an iPhone, all Samsung and others, they have the same, but you go directly into the photo. You can pick any photo and you hit edit. So there are functions that you can manipulate the photo itself. I'm sure you guys have cropped, right? You guys have all played with this. This is very helpful for composition. Okay, so that's the little square function. Okay, there's also these 2 functions right here, which I use quite a bit. So this one right here in the middle is a filter, and it will change the warmth or the coolness of the picture. If you go all the way to the end, you get a black and white filter. You actually get 3 of them. And the 3 of them are slightly different. So that one gives you more light in it. That one's a little bit darker. And then this mono is more in the middle. Okay. So you can hit done, or you can hit this, which is called adjust. So in the adjustment, I don't know if you guys have ever used these, but you can play with the exposure of your photo. So if it is a gray day, an overcast day, and you're taking a photo and the only choice you have, because you want to get that family photo or whatever, is you have to take it right then and there. Well, if it's kind of gray, go back in after and manipulate the exposure. By changing the exposure on, you can brighten it up, but you can also force a lot of the value out of it or into it. So do you see how now dark that is and how bright that is? So that one's a little confusing. It's a little too bright, but you can find a happy medium in there like that. There's no right answer, really. It just depends what you want. Do you want the background to be dark, or do you want the dog to be dark? And again, what kind of mood do you want to evoke? So I don't use brilliance or highlights very much. Shadows you can use. Shadows will take out a lot of the drama there. But contrast is the biggest one I play with. So contrast is like the Notenizer. So if you go all the way over here, you're almost at a noten. It's a 3-value noten. If you want less contrast, you're going over here, which becomes kind of a tonalist study. Remember, we talked about that when there's a less value contrast, when the those tones are more the same, they're more grays than they are blacks and whites. And then what you do when you're ready is you hit done. Then you can print that if you would like. It's a great place to start. It's also something that's great to use if you're on location. So if I'm painting outside in plein air and it's so bright, or there's so many blues and greens and I can't really see what the values are, I can take a picture and I can manipulate it so that I know, okay, this was what I thought I was seeing, or it wasn't what I thought I was seeing. And then how can I enhance it, right? We're artists. We don't have to necessarily make it a bright sunny day, or maybe it was bright and sunny and then the clouds came out and you didn't have a chance to capture that. So how do you get back to where that was? Okay. You can print this out as well. And then also when you're done with it, you just go back to edit and you hit revert and it goes back to your original. So you never permanently changed your photo. Okay. So you can do that with any photo. You can also do it on your Mac. You can also edit your photos here. Let's see. Let me call one up and I'll show you how to do it here. It's slightly different. Might take a second. I know we want to get to drawing, so I want to do a little bit of sketching. So I'll just see if I can bring this up real fast. Or not. Sorry, fast isn't in the cards for me today. Let me see. Well, it's in my PowerPoint, so maybe we'll just go there.
And I was going to say while you're doing that sometimes I take a screenshot of my pictures and then so I can keep my original and keep the black and white.
Totally, that's great. Yeah, you can also use the duplicate function as well. It's a good point.
Well. Okay.
All right, well, no, either way, yeah. I'm gonna move on because it's not finding it that quickly, but I'll show you guys, anyone who wants to stay on, I'll show you how to do that later. Because I don't want to waste our time totally. So, but I did want to tell you that you can use those filters, but also when I'm out and I'm doing my plein air painting, I use this little tool here. It's a viewfinder, which helps with composition, but it also takes the values out. So I love this. It's called Tom Lynch Secret Composition Tool. And when it has a red filter, so it takes out the colors, it just eliminates them, and then you can see values in front of you. So you can buy this, and it's great because it also has a little composition tool which turns it into thirds, so I can easily do a composition and value at the same time. However, you can make one of these at home very easily. You just create a frame and then you put a clear piece of colored plastic in between. So red is great, blue also works, but red I think helps eliminate a lot of colors that are out in nature. And so failing to have one of these, you can squint. Squinting really helps see value better. It takes out the detail too. It eliminates detail when you squint. Take your distance glasses off and just try to do it. Let things blur a little and just squint. And you'll see value. You'll see the light and dark. And then failing that, you can either add a light source. Like you can't really easily do that outside. You can't always add a light source, but you can try to locate a stronger light source. So maybe you're somewhere shady. Maybe you need to move. In the studio, you add a stronger light source and that will clarify the darks and lights. A lot of also plein air painters use umbrellas, which helps a lot. Okay. So you can use apps, but the apps will only manipulate things to a certain degree because everything is manipulated in a relative sense. The darks get darker, the lights get lighter. If you want to change the values completely, the best way to do that is just to do a small drawing or a small painting. And that allows you to assign values to the different compositional elements in your painting, and you can assign them however you like. So for example, here, this is backlit, and I've got all of these little Joshua trees. They're all dark. But what if I wanted these all to be light and everything else to be dark? So that's something that you can do only when you're doing it yourself. So we're going to do those in a minute. We just do it manually. We just use 1 or 2 colors. We plan a tonal range, and that way we've planned out our painting before we commit to it on good paper with color. So for example, here on the left, you can see this is the same view on the left, and it is 3 different value studies. So I've done what I would call, what is called high key value, which is a lot of darks and a lot of lights right on the top. There's a lot of contrast in that, right? It's very impactful. It's very energetic and strong. Here in the middle is more tonal. There's a lot more midtones. Those tones are closer to each other. And then on the bottom, it's even low. It's even higher values with less detail. So I've simplified the detail out because the detail is not really going to be very visible when the values are that close together. So it's 3 different ways of doing the same scene, and there's no right or wrong. And then here on the right is just a tonal version of a painting I'm planning to do later on. So I'm just planning it out. I'm not sure it quite 100% works yet, but I want my bridge to be the greatest focal point. I think I need stronger darks underneath the bridge. So still analyzing it. Here's a fairly tonalist work here. You can kind of see it turned into grayscale. There aren't really any dark darks, and there's no white left on the paper. Mid-range value creates, again, this very pastoral sort of moody scene. But you don't have to use those values that are there. For example, I darkened it up to create more of a high key value scheme, and then I lightened it up to create more of even push the tonalism even further. Really, it's almost like overexposed. So, and you also, this shows you don't need to use all the values. You can use a limited value range, which helps, you know, convey a mood. These 2 paintings have 2 very different moods, don't they?
Yes.
I would say so too. Okay, so I just did a couple more just to show you. Again, very bright colors, but here the value is being used to create the shadow. And here it's being used really to create contrast. So just a note before we get sketching, shadows are an essential compositional element because they give form to your painting, and they also give the illusion of mass to a 3D rendering on a paper. In general, your shadow needs to be darker than the object that's casting the shadow. How much darker? That is dependent on a lot of different things. So I thought that this might make a nice subject for us here. What do you guys think?
Sure.
For doing some value studies? Okay,
Sure.
so for those of you guys, I'm going to say, let's manipulate this photo using our photo editing tools, but I don't think we need to. I think we all can kind of draw it out. However, if you feel like you need to, what you can do is you can take a screenshot of this, and then it'll be on your own phone, and you can kind of play with it. What I see here already is a picture that had, and I'm just trying to move it a little bit. I want to find something for you. A picture that's got a little bit of value differentiation, but not a ton. It doesn't have a ton of value differentiation. I'm trying to find the folder I want to find for you. But you could really push it. If you notenize that, you can really push it. You can really make it go very, very graphically black and white, which I think is could be kind of interesting if you want to. because there's so much line in it already. Likewise, you could really take all that sky out and make it all about the mountains that are going on here. So we've got that one, and then I also have just a simple object here. Would you guys like to try the landscape or the banana?
Landscape.
Landscape sounds good to me.
Landscape. All right, let's do it. Let's see if I can make it even bigger. There we go. All right. So I'll leave it up there so you guys can see it. And then I'll be sketching it too. Here's what I would say before you get going on it, actually. Let me show you something. Before you get going on it, what I would do is normally you would start with a compositional sketch, and then compositional sketches become value sketches when you add shading to them. So I don't know if you're working in pencil or watercolor. I'll probably work in watercolor, but I would start with 2 different frames and maybe think about 2 different ways of going about this picture, 2 different ways. And I don't mean compositionally, I just mean value-wise, right? So I'm drawing. Can you guys see me doing this drawing? Don't worry too much about the form. It doesn't have to be the best drawing. It's not necessary for it to be the best drawing. Simpler is better when you're doing a value study, okay? But this is kind of what I see when I look at this. And you can, and so I would start here just with this simple line drawing, and then I would add color to it, okay? So by having 2 of them, it allows you to play a little bit. And you can use your watercolor or your pencil. If you're using watercolor, you know, remember that all you have to do is water down. You don't have to add white to anything. You just water down your color. Using a light color is tough for value studies. I think it's much better to use a darker color. But try to do 2 that are different and kind of see where that maybe takes you. Remember, you don't have to be literal. You're to the picture. It's just an interpretation. So we'll take a couple minutes. Is anyone struggling as to like where to start? Usually I start,
am.
yeah, so usually I start with my focal point, which in this case is, you kind of got 2, so it makes it a little more challenging. You've got the bridge and then you've got the rock formation. But what I would say is start with the focal point. And with that focal point, if you're not sure where to start with the mid-tone and then see how you like it. Because with watercolor, you can always darken it up. And also remember that the white of the paper is your highest value. So you don't have to leave white on the paper. There's no rule saying you have to, but it does kind of create that sparkle, you know? I've done watercolor paintings where there's no white left on the paper. But I'll show you guys mine just so you can get an idea of where I'm going, and then I'll go back to your picture. So I've got a very high contrast version up here where I've left this white, and I'll leave the mountain or rock in the back white. And even I left this here white, which if you look at the picture, this is not white at all, or the lightest light. This is a mid-tone. So, and then I've gone straight into my darks. This is pretty much the darkest dark here. And then I made the sky the next darkest dark. I didn't even use this one up here at all. Down here, so far, totally different. I've basically just gone in with my mid value. I've left the sky white and I decided to darken the cloud. I could have very easily made the cloud white here. Just forgot to leave the cloud, or maybe my brain didn't want it, I don't know. But if that was white, let's see, that would be very different. Okay, but you don't have to be literal to the painting, to the photo in your painting at all. So here I've gone in with just midtones, and I'm going to make this a bit more of a tonalist painting. So I'm going to leave that background in there. And then here I'll probably create some differentiation here. And then also here in the mountains, I can do that as well. So I'm obviously not really trying very hard to use my drawing skills. I don't care about that. Just creating a representation that I can follow later when I start getting into the nitty-gritty. I'm going to even do a third one, and then we'll do some share. Guys need another minute?
No.
I've only done one. How many are we
That's
supposed
okay.
to do?
Oh, that's okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna show you mine while you guys work. Okay, so I did 3 really quick, but I started before you. I started before you. Okay, I decided to do a Notan version. And I basically turned this into a black and white version, although I realized that this would really need to have an outline for it to make any sense. This is just using one value here, even though this got a little light because I was depleting my brush, but this is just one value. And then by looking at this in one value, I realized this doesn't really serve me because I don't want my eye drawn over here. So I can get rid of that. And then my eye is going in the Notan to the places of the highest contrast. Bridge, detail in the mountain. That's what I want. Those are the most interesting things in the painting to me. Everything else is secondary. So then I take another look at it and what is the scheme I want to do? So I want it to be a little bit more high impact, have a little bit more tonal variety in it. So I'm using like more elements on the scale. There's white whites, there's dark darks, and there's in-betweens in here as well, especially in the sky. Down here, it's a little bit more tonalist. These are just mid-range. There's less variety. You've got soft clouds. I've really only got, maybe I have 3 tonal values in here. The sky, this lighter blue, and then this slightly darker blue next to it. So it gives a definite, I still think I've got the most contrast where I need it. It's just a different emotion that's being evoked. This one is a lot more high energy, maybe high sunlight. This one maybe is feeling a little bit more moody, more misty, more calm. When I do the actual painting, now the challenge is to not get lost in all those beautiful colors and all those beautiful details and forget the plan that I made. That's the challenge. So is there anyone who felt like they had a successful one that they would like to share? Or maybe you just want to workshop it? I can't hear some of you guys, so unmute yourselves. Oh,
And I
Sarah.
got a question.
Sure, and then I'll come to you. Sarah's next after that. Yeah, go ahead, Ginny.
Okay. The biggest difference I notice when I watch you is you're not so literal. Here I am drawing, little picky things where you're just making a line to get the idea of what you want.
I'm not wearing my glasses. They're over here. So literally, I can't do that. And it's on purpose that they're over there because this isn't the time to get finicky. Like
I
a
see.
compositional sketch for me is about seeing big shapes and big lines. And then the value sketch is about seeing that value. If there's a small detail that's important, then I'll put it in there. Like if there's a little bird on the wire or something that is important.
But then when you do this painting, I know how it's going to come out. I can visualize
I'll
it.
put my glasses on when I do some of the painting.
No, but the thing is, even in the finished painting, it won't be so picky.
Correct. Right. And that's just my own artistic style. That's my own stylistic choice.
Well, but you're able to.
It will be more picky than this, though.
Yeah. But you're able to just use the fewest strokes to get the story across.
Correct. Yeah. Not everybody wants to do that, but yeah. Yeah. So don't wear your glasses, squint, do all those things, do what's counterintuitive when you're making studies, do what's counterintuitive. And then as much as possible, when I'm doing my painting, I also don't wear my glasses. You know, I don't,
Really?
I mean, when I'm doing portraits, I do. Don't get nervous about
Well,
any portrait commissions you might have been thinking about. But yeah, I mean, for me, I don't like to get that finicky. I'm always trying to get broader and looser. So yeah.
yeah, and I'm fighting to be more like that. And if I don't wear my glasses, I see things like this, so it wouldn't be very good.
11:30.
Try squinting with your glasses.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it isn't easy, right? Okay, Sarah, I'm coming to you. Oh, Sarah. Beautiful. You changed the composition.
Well, that's just the best I could do.
I like it. I like it because it's a more of a formal composition, and I feel like I'm looking right at it versus driving on the road, you know, on the side of it.
Ah, yes.
I think it's successful because you still have really high areas of contrast. And the way you really did that was you darkened the sky at the top, but you left it lighter where it meets the mountain. Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Sarah.
Thanks.
Really good. Okay, Hillary,
Thanks.
did you have yours up, Hillary?
Yeah, I did. I just tried to do two different, like you, high contrast or dark. And then I add, so I like a combination of both.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And then
what do you like about each one?
so I kind of like the way this kind of that, but I like it like
The soft
tonal
background.
here, then with maybe I add some more darks in here.
Yeah, so you can
Rather
add the darks right on top of that. They're two extremely different interpretations of the same subject,
Yeah.
right? Very
Yes.
nice. Beautiful.
Always trying.
Yeah, really
Kind of.
good. I noticed you didn't use pencil either.
I did a little.
Oh, I can't
Just
see
a
it. Yeah, I mean, you know, like that Catalina one that I had earlier, that one, there's no pencil. I just went straight in for that value study. Shelley?
Yeah.
Sure.
Ooh.
Oh, nice, Shelley.
So
I
Shelley,
tried it 2 ways.
you told me you wanted to paint this one day. That's why I chose this one.
Did I? It's beautiful,
Yeah.
but I'm finding it challenging.
Those are beautiful. So that one of them, you left the value really high in the sky. The other one, you
Yeah,
have a lower
it's
value,
light.
a heavier sky. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Which also means, you know, you get to have brighter color in if you do the bottom one, because you will have that bright blue. So if you did the top one, you wouldn't have that bright blue. It would be more muted, like in the picture.
Yeah.
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 Did you find that easy to do?
Yes and no. You know, so I think of myself, I'm like a crayon drawer or a coloring book drawer. I want to put the darks first and then put the lighters over, and it doesn't work. You got to put the lights down and then let it dry a little and then put the darks over. So it's just
With
the
watercolor.
reverse
Yes.
of what I want to do. Yeah.
If you work with charcoal, it's very easy to lift out, and also you could use white charcoal. And so if you're the kind of person who wants to put the darks down first, you could always get some pastels or get some charcoal, and you could use you could use those for your value studies. Thoughts? Yes, just some thoughts.
Okay, yeah.
Anybody struggle? Bonnie, are you still going?
I kind
As
of
a-
went to a color. I didn't do it just a tonal, so I just did a little color thing.
Can we see? You have an intrinsic.
Oh,
Oh, Bonnie.
There
You
it
have
is.
a very intrinsic, innate ability with value. It's already there for you. I see it in your pictures because you think so graphically about things. Can you hold it up again?
Black and white.
Yeah. Can you hold it up again?
mm-mm.
It's really nice, Bonnie.
Nice.
Yeah, beautiful. I feel like I'm there having a road trip, driving by it. Good job. So, and then, if you have done more than one and you're not sure which will work, or which you like the best, you can always paint two. Just paint two at the same time. I'm always painting two of the same thing. And then you can either pick the one that worked out the best for you, or you have two versions of the same thing. Artists do it all the time. Yeah. Kathy, how did you do?
Well, this is a real challenge for me, and I'm just, for some reason, I just had green paint ready, so
That's
I'm
okay.
just trying to get the shapes and stuff.
That's nice.
I'm
That's
just,
really good.
The perspective is really good of that
just
road.
relax, and
Yeah.
enjoy it. I don't know.
Enjoy
I
it,
really-
exactly.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this a while ago when we did, I think Bonnie mentioned about the dog or whatever, and then all of a sudden I got all nervous or tensed or whatever, and I enjoy the group, so this is what happened today, and I enjoy it. Thanks.
That's great. You're welcome. I really like how your darkest area of contrast is at the top of the shape. So you're really like getting that contour of that mountain right away, straight off. There's no confusion what we're looking at. So that's nice. That was really successful. Yeah. Did you have an art teacher who told you weren't good? Or do you have an artist in the family who was really a good artist?
No, I have a little voice in my head that says, no matter what I do, it's not good. It's just that little voice.
You need to stick around with this group more often. We're so supportive.
Yes.
And that voice won't
Yes,
be as
right.
loud anymore. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. We really appreciate it. Yeah.
I want to make her feel better.
Let's
Thank
see.
you.
I'll make her feel better. Yeah, I just use
Wonderful.
pencil because I have to run back and forth outside here. So, but it is true. I mean, by doing that, I understood that I definitely needed more contrast. But what if you wanted the mountain, the very top of the mountain, to be a real light off-white? Then you
And you would have to
your
darken the sky in some way. Yep.
Yeah.
You would have to.
Okay.
Either that or you'd have to have a line, one or the other.
Yeah.
But like,
Okay.
for example, in this one, I want there to be that appearance of snow on the mountain. So that means the sky has to be a little darker. Because otherwise you can't tell the difference, right? By the way,
boy,
look at those drawing skills.
But this was really so helpful. I've never done this, never.
I'm really glad. I'll send out any of you guys who want to try that with a banana or an apple or another object, or you could try to do better than my lemon, actually. Try that. That was a very early lemon I did, by the way. And so the critique on that was spot on. Anyone who wants to try this at home with an object, take a photo of it and then manipulate it in your phone and see if the light source is bright enough, see where the source or sources are coming from and where your cast shadow would be. It's a great exercise. And do it with your favorite photos, things you might be like, maybe you were saving that you want to paint up one day. And we'll continue to do more values for sure. We'll definitely always include them in our talks because I'm trying to be better about doing value studies as well, because it really makes a difference in your final painting. And if I'm going to go to the trouble to do a nice painting, I want to have thought those things through. I don't want to look at it after the fact and then go, oh, like with that penguin, I wish I had done something different, it would have come out better. So I'll also send out some resources. Sorry to keep you on this, Ginny. I didn't mean to. I'll send out some resources for you guys, like Drawing Academy and things like that, where you guys can go deeper if you would like to.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So also just want to let you guys know, we do have spots left for Catalina. The cutoff is coming up fast. And on top of that, if you don't want to do, or you can't do the Catalina event, I know some of you guys want to and can't be there. I am going to set up the fall retreat. It's going to be Ojai. And
Yay.
I'll have those dates out soon. And then I will also have, I'm trying to get much better. I will be better about getting the blogs out on time. And also usually the blog relates to the live draw. For those people who didn't join the live draw, they can look at the blog. But I also have a blog forthcoming about my trip up to the mountains doing plein air. I'd had like 3 trips up to the mountains this fall and winter. And then getting more of the events out. I'm going to be pushing out more events and give you guys more advance notice of those same day events, like the one we did at Bolsa Chica.
Nice.
Yeah. So just try to get a little bit more organized.
That was super fun.
That was fun. Beautiful day.
It was.
Yes.
It really was.
I loved Bolsa Chica. It was awesome. Thank you for organizing it.
You're welcome. It was super fun. I loved it. So did Mom. It was really great. Well, thank you, everyone. I'll post this up. I'll send you guys the links later today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for
Ann.
doing
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Anne.
Everyone.
Yeah, and thanks for
Thank
your
you.
participation.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Thanks, Ann. Great to
Yeah, and
see
you're
you.
Welcome. Yeah, feel better, Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah, feel better.
Everybody
better,
stay
Sarah.
healthy.
You gotta play.
Working on it.
Have a good day, you guys.
Bye-bye. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.